Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to a new episode of the FMCG Guys. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you tune in, welcome. Here we speak with the top voices in the fast-moving consumer goods and retail industries on a bi-weekly basis, so every Wednesday and every Saturday at 7:30 in the morning Central European time. And you'll find us on your favorite podcast platform, which is probably where you're tuning in from, as well as on our LinkedIn page. We have 13,000 followers right now. So if you're not following us, we recommend you do. And in this adventure that's been going on for 2+ years, I'm lucky to be accompanied by not one, but two FMCG luminaries. And one is my co-host today, Christina Nicolaou. Hey, Christina, how are you? How's Athens?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing well. Athens is amazing and very sunny. So I'm very happy to see that. And I'm also celebrating a milestone. I guess I've been with the FMCG guys for a year now. Feels
Congratulations.
at the same time a very long time and a very short one.
I know, you're right, totally. It feels like I've known you for 5 years now.
At least.
But I'm glad it's been a year. That means that we can do so many things more, like in another year, right? So that's
exactly.
That's really cool. And we've spoken, like, when you think about it, and we just released like the top 10 of the episodes most downloaded of all time. And you've co-hosted a few of them. So
yeah, I was looking at it and I thought about it and I was like, yes, that's kind of like a great accomplishment, is it not?
Yeah. I didn't do the countdown, but we should. So also very excited to introduce today's guest from joining us from Paris, which is, as we're talking before the call, soon to host the Olympic Games this year. And according to LinkedIn, I've known her since 2019. So I'm very excited to make it official that we know each other with everyone. She has an amazing background in FMCG and e-commerce, having worked in the past at the likes of Pernod Ricard and eBay. Her name is Julie Laurence, and she's the MD e-commerce or Chief E-commerce Officer at the Dermocosmetics and Medical divisions at Pierre Fabre. Hey, Julie, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm prepared for the Olympics. There you go.
What discipline? Fencing, you said, right?
I'm going to go for fencing. It's elegant, it's strategic, and it's, only for the connoisseur. So that's why.
Yeah, it's a typical sport that I've only watched when there's Olympic Games on, right? So,
and it teaches you to also defend yourself if you get suddenly very attacked, but you need to.
Yeah, actually, it's a good analogy of what life is sometimes, no?
Yeah, that's why I'm all about fencing. Better than racing. I'm not good at racing, so it's not going to be my analogy.
Maybe that's a good title for the podcast: fencing your career.
Fencing your career. Yeah, I like it.
Speaking of which, so currently you're at Pierre Fabre as the head of e-com, but how did you start your career back in the day?
I'm I wouldn't say I'm an alien, but I'm not the typical. I don't have the typical path. I'm initially a lawyer, so something very different. Lawyer in the south of France. My career was very kind of planned. You do law, you become a lawyer, and then that's your life for the next 40 years. But then at the time, I kind of stumbled across the beginning of e-commerce, and I was working during my studies as a call center assistant for a company who was selling wine online. And I really loved it. And I said, okay, I cannot be a lawyer. So I went and spoke to my parents, who were absolutely gutted because my brother was a banker. They saw me as a lawyer, and then suddenly I was dropping things like marketing, and they were, wow. So that was a bit of a movement. So eventually I did an MBA specialized in the business of wine and spirits, and I joined Ricard, which is one of the subsidiary of Pernod Ricard based in the south of France. And I was working in marketing for the first time in my career. And then one thing led to the other. I moved to the UK because I was very much attracted by an international career. So that's the beginning. But just to say, sometimes you end up in a path where you will have never imagined you will be. And it's also, I think, something that we need to repeat to the younger generation, I will say, is that don't feel that you have to have that school or that education to become really good in the field of marketing and FMCG, because actually I believe that with stamina and the desire to make it through, you can. So, and actually my lawyer or legal background helped me every day. So that's a huge asset.
So there you go, Daniel. We've got an architect and a lawyer here talking about FMCG and our careers in the industry, right?
It makes my sociology major feel super relevant to the work I do, right? Compared to you guys.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And I was actually speaking in a panel a few months ago, and it was part of the Lean-In network. And the topic was a part of the Sheryl Sandberg's book, where it says that career is a jungle gym and not a ladder. So it's not necessarily that you start at one point and just go up the same way. You're going to jump around, get more experiences, and evolve yourself. But Julie, you said like you were in France and then suddenly moved to the UK. So how did you make that decision?
I think it was, again, no one in my family has a international background, because sometimes you're exposed, through your parents, through the career of your parents, or your family, to an international background. It's not the case. I really had the desire to actually work in English, to learn about different culture. And so I left Marseille and went into initially I chose Dublin, but Dublin didn't actually happen, and I ended up in London. And when I arrived in London, it was a bit of a reality check that, it doesn't matter what education you had. What matters is what can you bring on the table through your experience in the UK. And I joined at the time Orange, which was the communication company. And it was really like that moment where, French people, and sorry for the French people who are listening, but we tend to look and label a lot ourselves through, I went to this school and this school and this school. And again, that doesn't matter in Anglo-Saxon markets. What matters is really what you did and what you can bring here, who you will become in this market. So this is how it started in the UK. But really, I have to say also that the UK for that is brilliant, because it gives you such a recognition. If you put effort on the table, it pays off. The only advice there is that you have to choose big name, household name that you are able to obviously after sell in your in a career, rather than just a good role for a smaller company that might not be necessarily recognized if you go again abroad. Or so that's how it started in the UK, and then from the UK, Switzerland. So
the blue chip companies, as they call them, no, like the big names are the ones that, and actually as a headhunter as well, I look more at the CV than the studies, but that's a big cultural shift compared to France, where you even have special schools that you go to for 2 years after your secondary school to prepare to go into the most prestigious universities, no, the Grande École, which is a very particular French system, no?
It's and like I say, I think I'm really an outlier in all of this, whether I come from education to career path, because it's not at all the codes a normal French people will follow. And it's true that, those Grande Écoles are great because they really, first of all, give a fantastic education and a great framework. But I tend to believe a lot in the adaptability and the I will say the path you create by yourself. And when you don't come from the expected place of the renowned place, it forces you to be 3 times above everyone else to cut through. And then when you do it once and repeat and do it again, it becomes an habit. And then it really happens across all the different areas of your life. And so I'm more like, if my daughter tell me one day, Mama, I want to do this, and I'm like, wait a second, let's push you in something very, out of your comfort zone, see how it fits, but make it by yourself, not by the name of the school that you will go.
Yeah. And then you started at Orange, then you went to Hilton, which is another big company, and then you joined eBay first in London and then you moved to Switzerland, and that was obviously your path into e-com. How did that happen, and what was it like to work at eBay at that time as a brand manager, which is not an atypical role, if you like?
You're right, Daniel, because it was 2007. eBay was 3-digit growth in most of the market in Europe. And the people who were recruited at eBay at the time, I think if there is one move in my whole career that was the best, is this one. Because at the time, no one did e-commerce, no one did digital. It was so little that everyone today knows about e-commerce. Everyone knows about it. It's a must-have in your CV. 15 years ago, it was not a must-have, and it was actually almost regarded that, what is that? And jumping into that company, I was absolutely amazed by level of the people. Most of the people obviously came from Cambridge and all these great academic school, but they had such a strong intellectual skills, and they were curious. But at the same time, I was coming with, hey, I'm going to talk about brand. And everyone was looking at, what? But brand is the logo, right? No. Brand is not the logo. Brand is what you feel about eBay, what's the experience, what impression you get when you get on the landing page, and not just the product you see, but everything else. And it was amazing because I was coming to them with an angle that was emotional, rational, but a whole different languages. And these guys were coming with, okay, this is the algorithm, this is the logical, this is the how we're going to power the shift and the new shape of shopping in the world. And it was brilliant because we both respected a lot each other's world, and we were learning a lot. And really the key thing is, at that time, that move exposed me to some of the most intelligent people that I met throughout my career, because they were like people who believed in a new world, and you can tell through all the career that these guys have followed today, they are leading the way. So it was a pleasure to be with this company at that time. And then obviously that's the first time that I was able to grow, and I moved to Zurich after with eBay, and suddenly I was looking at all the European markets, brand always. And then I was again very lucky in 2012. My boss, who recruited me to go to the UK, asked me to join her squad team in the US to go after the BRICS market. And again, fantastic. For me, it was amazing. I felt like not Christophe Colomb, but like, the people who were navigating to discover a new world. It was really the best experience.
Yeah, I mean, just in case that people didn't hear it properly, she was in the BRICS market, which were, Brazil, Russia, China, Mexico. I see on your LinkedIn profile as well. So super interesting. And the fact that you were relocated and promoted twice, it means that you probably did quite well there, I imagine, in the company.
I was, the more as well that you move in your career, you doubt sometimes about what you're good at and what you're not good at. But I started to saw a similarity. I was good at convincing because I believed in what I was doing. And at eBay, again, American company, very pragmatic company. They love people who believed into something, but for not just for, like facade, people that really bring on the table opinion, conviction, and in a way that they want to build together. And I was lucky because I was exposed also to managers that value that. So you didn't have to just do a great job. You had to do a great job, but also be yourself. And that makes a whole world of difference.
I guess that's where leadership makes all the difference in the world. You talk about the visionaries that you had around you and how you got to be exploring a little bit even. So I guess this is really when looking up to great leaders that can inspire you to do that and give you like the freedom within a framework to be yourself and be creative and create value for the whole network, right? The company, the customers, the consumers.
So I think for me, the more that experience, but also is like leadership. It's, we talk a lot about it, but what does it mean? And today for me, what I learned is that you have to carry a vision, or you have to carry a conviction that people buy into, but they know that is what you believe in for real. Again, that you don't do that to advance your career, because people today, they are very, they know when someone navigates a corporation because of, political agenda. They know when, someone is doing that too, because they have to do it. And a leadership is someone that, you look at and say, I want to follow that because I know that it's the right thing, because they believe in it. And it's true. This is how also you get the most committed team ever, because they know that you will have their back, but also you're going for a common purpose and vision. And I was lucky again that a company like eBay allowed me, through those different markets and through the team that were our team at the time, to develop that skill. I think you have it in you also, but you need to find a place where it can be nurtured and it can grow. And that's really something that happened then.
And after this very exciting journey that you described in eBay, you joined the world of FMCG. I'm very curious with the background you had and suddenly going into the brand side of consumer goods. How did you find the industry back then?
So I had the Ricard experience from very early on in my career.
Right.
And when I decided, because when I was at eBay, I was based in San Francisco and a bit in Zurich, traveling to Moscow, going back to Shanghai a lot, and then Beijing, and it was too much. And I decided, okay, it's time to actually, center myself. So I wanted to move back to Paris. I was also missing a bit my roots, I guess, my French roots. And one of the first company I got in touch with was Pernod Ricard, because I still had, some contact there. And they contacted me and said, usually we'll put you in touch with someone in the digital team. And I was, no, I'm not a digital person. What do you want me to? Because I felt 8 years at eBay doesn't make you a digital person. But little that I realized that when you spend 8 years every day in a digital product, you become per se a digital person. And especially at the time where none of the business have done their digital transformation. But so when I arrived at Pernod Ricard, the only position I felt able to carry on was the e-commerce, because I was, okay, I'm not a digital person. That's not my strength. But if you ask me what consumer wants and how I can make them buy online, then yes, I know how to do this. And moving back to Pernod Ricard, suddenly I felt the industry is great. It's about, conviviality, which is the signature of Pernod Ricard. And then I arrived and suddenly I was, only 3% of the sales are made online. So you're back not only at a brand level, so you're back to all the basic and fundamental, because FMCG's company, they know how to do marketing. They are true marketers. They live and breathe through the insight of consumer to how they will express it on a pack, on, a campaign. And, suddenly I was, wow, so you're back on that, which is good, because this is really true marketing, I think, is at its best in FMCG's company. But also you're back in an offline world, technically. And you're also back on a retail model, which is your three-party. You're dependent on a retailer, which is obviously not anymore you. So all of that, it's almost like, I felt stupid almost when I took the job, because, oh la la, you didn't realize all these things. They're going to become your reality. And actually it's great, because very quickly you adapt, and very quickly you bring what you know from your previous life into this one. But what was amazing is to, again, regain the right level of skills and competencies from marketers, from, brands company, the desire of conquest that market have, because they are on the ground trying to fight for consumer. And also you're back in a physical or more omnichannel world. And the battle there was like, how do I convince everyone that e-commerce and online had a role to play in their route to market, in what matter for their brand. So at the beginning was a bit like unsettling for 2-3 weeks, and then you realize there's an avenue for you to convince people and to make the shift.
2-3 weeks? Normally it takes like 6 months at least.
Yeah, but I'm a not patient person. So if I don't crack it in 3 weeks, I'm like, no, it's true. You have the 100 days. Sorry, people keep calling. You have the 100 days, but at the same time, sorry, I think it's a delivery person. Will you be able to edit and stop?
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll
because
cut.
if he keeps calling, it's the delivery man, I think. The 100 days was also something that you have to bring a project on something visible that sets what your mark will be. But for me, if within 3 weeks I was not able to perceive where my value is, probably I will have, I say I'm impatient, but I'm most impatient with myself and demanding with myself.
Yeah.
After within 1 month, though, I started to put in place a project which was the core, which was, okay, for FMCG, this is how consumer will look at my product, touch, look. Online, it doesn't happen, it cannot happen. Everything is on the product page. What do I need to do? What are my must-have on the landing page? And sorry.
No worries.
Are you going to be able to cut and edit all of that?
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
You have to think it's an audio podcast at the end of the day. So
Okay.
I will go into it later and cut off like some parts, and it will be fine. Like this won't be this I'm speaking now won't go out.
Okay. And so, would you mind if I go down and see if he has delivered?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let me just one second.
Yeah, don't worry.
Sure. Yeah.
Here we go. So whenever you like.
Okay. And so for me, the point was, how quickly do I need to fix one thing that was missing, which is how do I correct the product page to reflect or to compensate as much as possible the fact that, of course, you cannot touch, you cannot see the product. And so within 100 days, I had developed a new database to easily access the product page and share them to retailers. So I was demanding, but it was worth it because really it was also about to quickly set the tone to what we need to do. And that's just a basic, it's not a strategy, it's just a way to explain very quickly in one tangible and simple way where your value is. So that was the beginning of Pernod Ricard.
Yeah, and one thing that you did at Pernod Ricard, I know that you started like a business within the business, and all the digital part is very like starting a new division in some way. So how was your experience like acting as an entrepreneur within a corporation basically? And how did you deal with stakeholders, get budgets? I mean, there's a lot to it, right?
I'm very proud of this because it's difficult. Sometimes I don't know if it's more difficult to do it within the corporation or outside, because obviously within you have the funds, it's easy. You have back people that help you with the budget. The only problem is that it will never be yours because it belongs to the company. And also sometimes you can find that not your enemy, but your hurdles are more from the inside than from the outside. However, it was great because I was able to present this idea to the COMEX, and the COMEX actually approved it and gave me the go-ahead. And I was, again, very lucky that I had a boss at the time, a woman that was absolutely super supportive on letting me present this idea. So I had a good alignment with the COMEX and that boss. And my proposition to the group was like, guys, why don't you try to recontrol a part of your distribution? Today you have Sephora, which belongs to LVMH. And that's a way for them to gain data about the distribution. That's also a way to get data on the competition. That's a way also to sell their product directly to consumer, to learn, to get a lot of insight from that And I was, why don't you do it, right? You have products, you have bottles, you have, it's fantastic, but why don't you also create a distribution brand? So that's what I presented to you. The brand is Drinks & Co. And at the time I was, okay, I remember branding background came all together. I created the logo with a designer friend of mine, and the name, I chose it in the weekend and presented it. But I had a lot of background after. And the experience is that, again, conviction, always backed with a lot of rational and a lot of, tangible, because a business and a group like Pernod Ricard is like almost 10 billion euro. You have to back it up with not just your intuition, but like really with something that they want to invest in. But at the same time, I'm always a very, I will say, conservative person. So I don't like, people when they come about digital and they talk about really changing the world. And I like things to be, I believe we're going to do, it's going to be simple and it can grow. And so that worked really well. And then, in terms of budget and unlocking, we remain a small team, but what was very important is the buy-in from the market. So if you have an idea at HQ, it's great, even if you have the backup for Comet, but it only remains an idea as long as, no one takes it. So you have to have adoption, and the adoption is coming from the market. You also had to have reassurance from the brands, because the brands are this maison producing their whiskey or Havana Club or, Valentine's, Absolute. And you have to reassure them that distribution brands we're going to have can fit with their brand, can fit. You can put a bottle of Absolute. It will match. It will be a good environment, such as Sephora is a great environment for Chanel, as much as it can be for, Dior, as much as it can be for Benefit. So you have to convince brand reassurance, show them that you care about those design aspects, show that you care about the languages of brands, of their DNA, and at the same time, show to market that it will create value. And it's also a way to not compete directly with their business, because that's the other thing, right? So it works. It takes a lot of listening and a lot of, but also of, why don't we test, see? And show people that it doesn't require a lot of, resources to be implemented and to get going. So that's how it worked. And eventually, Drinks & Co, I remember it was like, I felt like not Napoleon who was conquering the world, but still a bit proud when I was Argentina saying, okay, we'll take it. And then I had Colombia, okay, and then Brazil, and then Hong Kong, and then Japan. And it was like, I remember I had a map with my team. And every day we were putting a little flag and say, okay, we launched Drinks & Co there, and we are so happy. It felt absolutely amazing. So the only problem, again, you are faced within a corporation, and there is that moment people cannot see because we're on a podcast, but at some point you do all the effort to climb the mountain and you're there, and then what happens is that when it works, then that's where people really want to also be part of it and to take it. And that was a bit my sour moment, is that you build so much, you believe so much in it that eventually people start to take it everywhere, and then you come to the point where it's not yours. It's never yours, and that's where you have to learn to also let go of that.
But I love how you position it about being aware about the landscape that you're in, that you're not alone, and that perhaps the strategic alignment is not enough to influence. You need to also have the operational element as well as the local agendas and ensure that it fits so that you get that buy-in. But really, from what you're describing and the way that you were describing your eBay journey as well, it feels very much also something that's part of your character. Like you're really the explorer, the one who goes out there to find these new lands, right? And see how you can get something and evolve it. I'm very curious now to understand, what is it that you're doing now at Pierre Fabre? What's the scope of your role as managing director of eCom?
So I'm becoming wiser. So I joined Pierre Fabre 3.5 years ago. And Pierre Fabre is a pharmaceutical company with two main businesses. One is medical, so they have oncologic treatments. They will have medication with iron supplement, things like this. And their core business is actually dermocosmetic. They are the one that built and invented dermocosmetic back in the 60s. And they live in brief, formulation, the, pathology for the skin. And I joined a business and a group. The position was great. It was really around joining to keep accelerating e-commerce. But e-commerce was already at 14% of their sales online. So it's much more than Pernod Ricard, which is really a bet. Pernod Ricard, this one is, you start already to be, okay, now that's a channel. And what do we need to do? Considering the fact that in front of us, we had L'Oréal. And L'Oréal, by far, is to me one of the best marketer company in the world, by far. And you add to that layer the dermocosmetic growth, which is today, post-COVID, beauty has changed. Beauty is not anymore about makeup. It's really about I must feel well and I must look well, but through healthy skin. And we know how this is massively growing. So it has growth. It has a great leader and competitor, which is L'Oréal, that help us always push harder. And for me, it was, okay, it's no brainer. We need to absolutely accelerate the sales online, but do it in a more, I would say, not traditional, but more like mature way. There's less risk that needs to take. However, we need to be better. We need to be leader. We need to also challenge the company a lot from the inside with regards to the online basics. And so it's great. I was also, again, I keep saying that I'm lucky. I have to start to feel it, but I was lucky. The boss who recruited me, Italian person, absolutely amazing. He has been in the group for 30 years. And he says, Julie, I don't know e-commerce, but I know the group and I know the international market. Help me to build it. And we had this fantastic duo for 3 years where basically we were really, again, in the conquest of the market to buy into our e-commerce strategy and our e-commerce approach. And the way here to do it is less, I will say, it's not a revolution what I did for Pernod Ricard, but it was bolder. This one is like, okay, it's strong, but it needs to have the buy-in again from all the market and all the brands, but in a very kind of solid way. And my role is to make sure that everyone within this company wants to grow their sales, but in a sustainable way, and that he also doesn't compromise their existing distribution or their existing investment. I want it to be done in a very progressive and a very solid way. That's my goal. And I build a team around that. So that's also very lucky that, for me, that I was able to create my own team, to recruit my own people. And that's where we've been.
And when we talk about digital, there was also, it was already pretty high up on the agenda in 2019 when we first spoke, Julie. But obviously with COVID, it became like top of the agenda for FMCG companies, no? But now it's a strange scenario, no? Because there's been a bit of a deflation in the channel, but at the same time, there's a lot of conversation of e-commerce, not only as of a bottom of the funnel conversion sales channel, but also really as a top of the funnel marketing tool. If you were put yourself in the seat of a CEO of a consumer goods company, how do you see e-commerce fitting in the overall strategy of the business?
So for me, e-commerce is not an end game, not anymore. And it should be not regarded as an end game, but it needs to be regarded as basically an essential component of your omnichannel strategy, in the sense that it's not something you need to accelerate. It's something that needs to be embedded in everything you do. And it's 1 + 1 = 3, meaning if you crack something, you need to always think, what can I do when I put my online and my offline together that is not just coherent, but it brings that extra plus to the consumer. And today, depending on the industry you're talking about, or depending on if I take food is complicated. Groceries is complicated because no matter what, it's a convenience purchase and people are used to this. E-commerce can play a big role in terms of, easing that pain and freeing up, but you need to really bring together what's the USP and how can I always make it fluid between my offline to online. Other categories, they need e-commerce today more than anything because, as you mentioned, Daniel, it's not anymore a conversion tool or route to market. It's just the starting point of your inspiration or your search. And I mean, today you have more searches on Amazon sometimes than then you have like on Google. How do you address that? Ratings and review today are more important than, you know, advocacy from your peers or like from an ad. People regard more consumer feedback than a brand advertising. What do you do about it? Because most of those ratings and review are on the e-commerce page. So how do you leverage that? And it really depends on, again, the industry are so different from, you know, tech versus fashion versus drinks versus, you know, pet food versus cookies. So how do you actually build this? And I don't think it's an easy one, but I think that you need to always keep e-commerce, first of all, in a commercial context. That is very important. But at the same time, you need to leverage his marketing capacity within the cell. And I don't know how it's going to play in the future, but I know some things are not going to change. People will still be comparing prices. People will still be reading or listening to ratings and review. People will still want to have a good delivery, and people would still want to have choice. So how you build that across everything that you sell. After I don't know if it's going to be on TikTok or on others, but...
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like the digital channels overall, regardless of how you name them and how you go into the different variants of them, on demand or social commerce or whatever, they're all going to be part of the overall business. I was looking at the Cadney reports of this year, and actually digital capability scores very high. I guess it's something like second position across all the different reports. So I'm wondering, Julie, from your perspective, for someone who is an aspiring GM or CEO, right, they don't want to be a digital expert. Is there merit in them having an experience with e-commerce within their career path?
Absolutely. You have to, same as you have to know your offline commercial market. You have to because it teaches you not humility, it teaches you the basic that we tend to forget, that in a second, people can compare your competition, which in offline, it will take you to change the shop. It's not, or yeah, you can look at a different shelf, but in online, it's brutal. It's brutal how the competition, when it comes from a, you know, another area or another market, can suddenly be next to you. And it teaches you that speed, it teaches you that that basic. And again, I don't consider myself a digital expert. I'm not a digital person. Like, I don't like tweaks and I'm bad. I just don't. But I'm a practical person. And I think e-commerce is the most practical thing you can ever encounter. Because you know in a second if you perform or if you don't. You know in a second how you can fix something. It's really so basic. So it's funny how the most digital thing is to me, the least complicated one. Is very simple. If you have a good page, you know, and yes, all this, everyone should actually spend some time. Actually, you know what? Probably what they should do, they should spend time in a call center. Mm-hmm. They should listen to. My career, I started on that. It was a long time ago. But when you call people and say, "Where is my order? Can you track it? Why this was broken? Can you replace it?" You know, and especially that people more and more tend to be, sorry for the word, but they're spoiled. They really expect everything is like, it's your brand, you fix it, your product, I order, I pay. Because I pay, give me all the power in the world to be complaining and you need to fix it with a magic wand. And it's true, that's what sometimes e-retailers do. They are a magic wand. You want something, it gets to your door like 1 hour. Being at a consumer center is probably what I would recommend to anyone. Maybe I need to go back to mine sometimes, but
maybe you have to go back to a call center at some point, Julie. And I think that's very good advice, but it's really being at the weeds of the business and really growing like that. Actually, good point, because I'm going to ask you, with everything that you've learned in your career, and you've actually given already some career advice, but what's the one piece of advice you would give your younger self with everything that you've learned?
First of all, I will not change anything. I will do the same path forever again, even if I have some disappointments along the way. Allez, probably, I don't think if it helps for the young generation, but I will say the power of no. The power of no. Learn to say no. When you don't agree with something, when you don't think it's right, learn to say no. But at the same time, work so hard. I'm sorry to say, but it's extremely important that I still believe in a lot of hard work. I still believe in, showing what you can do, taking up the challenge, not being arrogant about it, but being a believer in yourself and in what you can do. Work hard. And when you think it's not right, or say no. I think those are the two things.
This was Julie Laurent, Digital Director at Pierre Fabre. Christine, what are your takeaways from this conversation?
First of all, I was very interested to hear that Julie is actually a lawyer. So coming also from like an unconventional background for FMCG, it was really good to meet someone else who has had this kind of like a little bit different career path. And I love how she said that, at the end of the day, you have to have adaptability and to create a path for yourself. But if you don't have the background that people expect, you just have to force it like 3 times what a normal person would do in order to be able to advance.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of good reminder for this is more for students, that it's a good idea to get some type of work experience early on, because I think it gives you more it just prepares you better for your career, but it also maybe takes you to places you didn't imagine, right?
Yes, and that's actually a conversation I had with my sister when, she finished her first degree and her bachelor's, and then she wanted to go for a master's, and she was like, I want to do a master's in HR. And I told her exactly what you're saying, Daniel. So get to work first, because you have an idea of what different functions do or how things work. But unless you experience it, you never know what it is that you really want to do.
Yeah, exactly. What else? I think that it was interesting how also, another unconventional thing she did was going to London early on, and because that's like a key building block, I think, in somebody's career, to go overseas or get international experience. I think that's something that you've done as well, Christina, early on in your career, to get roles that were international. I think that that's a key building block, and it also opened a lot of doors for her, no?
Absolutely, working with different cultures. But for her, it was also a lot about having a different working environment, as I understood that London offered her a variety of opportunities that, given her unconventional background that we mentioned, she wouldn't have had in France, possibly.
Yeah. And also, I think that the common thread of going with blue chips, also an interesting one. And not meaning that you can't have a great career. Look at me, for example, that if you haven't only worked with blue chips, but I think it's like a good example of that's been in that common thread, and that's helped her open doors, no?
Absolutely. And again, when you have to build this path for yourself and it's not laid out for you because of the school that you came out of, it definitely helps to get the right names into your resume early on. And I love how, we invited her with this very fancy digital title, and she said, she was 8 years working in a digital product, and she didn't even feel like she was a digital person.
Yeah, it's like interesting. She got functional experience through being in a digital experience, in a digital industry, which is interesting. But it's like, if you think about it, if you are a business manager and you go to work for a logistics company, you may be able to do a logistics role in an FMCG, right? It kind of makes sense.
Absolutely. The product, let's say, or the service that you're working with inevitably shapes you in a way, in the way you think and you understand what this whole process that comes with it is all about.
Yeah, exactly. What did you think of her vision of e-commerce, since also you've worked in that area? Because she talked about it not being an end game and needs to be embedded in the general business.
and how it is very much fluid on the whole USP you have with e-commerce from online to offline. And at the end of the day, as you mentioned as well, it's mostly at these days, at least, a starting point to the shopper journey, right? So lots of people start searching online. They might be transacting offline, or also on the contrary, you might see something in the physical world and you want to take some time to compare prices, go through different websites and figure out a little bit more information about the product before you end up buying it online. So at the end of the day, this is the endless conversation of should digital be a sidecar function or should it be embedded within the business? And I guess it all comes down to the level of maturity that each business has and how digitally advanced both the business itself as well as the consumers are. So for fashion, for sure, it's something that's taking a big part of the revenues, but for FMCGs, it's still kind of it's in earlier stages than we have seen in fashion or electronics, right?
And she's in dermocosmetics, which is probably somewhere in between both of them, no? I can imagine.
Yes, and one of the things that I loved is when she said she went to Pierre Fabre and they had a competitor, L'Oreal, which is quite advanced in that area, and that helped them push even harder. So it's also a really good point to be looking at what your competitors are doing and to help push the bar higher for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, like taking I think they call it the category approach, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that she thinks that e-commerce will be a must for CEO because it teaches you like the basics of the business. It's like running a business on its own. So I thought, and you can try things quicker. So I thought that was a good point.
Yes, also that we need to remember that at the end of the day, it's not so complicated. It's also very practical and very basic in a way, because it's where people can go and really compare your product with other products. We can see this very clearly on Amazon. It even has all those small tables, right, in the A+ content where you can directly compare one product's features with another's and understand what the ratings and reviews are. And all these things have a very big impact on the purchase decision at the end of the day. So it's not so sophisticated. Some of its parts are like the user experience that you can create through a digital product as you're developing. But selling your products online, it's just the very essence of what the FMCG business is.
Yeah, it is kind of, it has that scrappy element, like the classical sales rep that carries the bag, no? Which was something that a lot of people think that CEOs should have done before in their career, no?
Yes, but at the end of the day, you need to be very, very much aware of where your consumers are. And your consumers are online. They are searching online or transacting online, and you need to have a really good understanding of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hope our listeners have left with a better understanding of the online-offline equation. And I think that what I've really liked about Julie is that she brought her full self here, and we really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks again, Julie, for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. If you enjoyed the conversation, please leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps the podcast be more visible and other not supply chain, FMCG and retail professionals find us easier. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys.